Well, today is finally the day that we can start the car. Hopefully, we have all the resources needed. We're going to put everything back on the car and put all the fluids in the car, and I'm going to show you how to do the coolant if you have a pressure refill system. I'll show you that in a second. If you have it the normal way, I'll explain that as well, because these engines are, well, in terms of coolant and cooling, you can't get it wrong. So I'll go through that in a bit. But hopefully we're going to turn it over on the key. We're hopefully going to get it to start. I have a new battery, but it's not here because the company that I've ordered it from, the couriers, apparently it was express delivery and it was due on, well, this Thursday. It hasn't arrived because for some reason they need a signature and they couldn't be bothered to ring any of the other flats in my house for a signature, despite the fact that there were a good number of people here, and that's what other couriers do. But hey, you know, so it's in circulation. But for some reason they don't deliver on Saturdays. So DX, I believe they're called. I wouldn't recommend them whatsoever. Their customer service is non-existent. You can't get through to them whatsoever. Their phone number is reduced to an automation. So just be aware about that if you're ordering batteries from, I think it's Tanya Batteries. They're a great company, to be fair, and they sell a lot of batteries online at a really good price, and my battery didn't cost much at all. But the company they use, DX Courier Services, no, not at all. Anyway, get on with the work. So over here we just have the various bits to go back on, at the airbox, the rocker cover. So we'll sort all that. We've got all the rest of the gubbins to go back on, obviously. And over here we've got the oils. So we have the CVT fluid, which is correct to Minis and Rover spec. It's got to be SO 799. Okay, now this is from Westway Lubricants, and to be fair, I've heard really good things. There is a Facebook group called the MGFTF Step Speed group. Okay, it is specifically a group of enthusiasts that have got step speed or steptronic CVT gearboxes like this, but for MGFs and MGTFs. But there's an awful lot of experience on there. I think there's about 700 members. There's quite a few members. Granville Hyperloop semi-synthetic 1040 to spec. Now remember, a lot of oils these days are far exceeding the spec of the original specs that Rover and Ford and all a load of other manufacturers have given. So this just about exceeds the original specification. Now this oil, I'm going to consider this a throwaway oil. I mean, this costs 20 quid, which is a really good deal for 5 litres. I mean, Granville oils I've gone to for a long time now. I've never had an issue. And if they're to spec, then there's nothing wrong with them in terms of if you want to go for something like Castrol, that's fine, but or Mobile. But the truth is, the only thing that separates them is possibly some additives, but it's very few additives. I really can't justify the cost and the price. So yeah, that's the correct oil for a K series. You can try fully synthetic or thinner oils, but honestly, why mess about with it? Just stick to the book. This oil will be changed probably in about 3 or 4 months time, depending on the mileage, if I do get the car running and get it MOT'd. But it will be a very low mileage oil. It might stay in the car for 6 months, depending on how things go, so we'll just keep on that. And obviously we've got OAT coolant. Don't use the blue stuff, just use OAT coolant, and that's what was recommended for the car. And I've got 2 bottles, one that's slightly open and one that isn't. I did order this, but I realised I had this from the Focus, and it takes around 5.5 litres, and we're hoping to get it around to use it correctly. Now I will show you this tool now, because we are going to do it very soon. This is a coolant pressure test and refill kit. Now this is a really good kit. They're not cheap. I got this off eBay for about 70 quid. They're everywhere. They're very easy, ready available. Okay, and what you have here is a system where you can either, using this tool here, pump up the pressure using the correct cap. I've got to find the correct cap for this car, and you can pump it up to pressure and find out if it holds the pressure, and I'll be doing that after I've filled it with coolant. I think you can do that with air, but just I'd do it with coolant when it's filled. This is the refill equipment. Now you will need an air compressor. I've got an air compressor myself, so that's not an issue. But basically what you're doing is you're taking away air out the system. You're sucking air out and putting coolant in, getting rid of those, you know, cheeky air pockets. There is a universal adapter that I may use if it starts to be a problem, but they can be a bit funny as well. You've even got old radiator caps. Look at that. That is so cool. So I could like use this on maybe a P6. Yeah, they've covered any eventuality. These two adapters are to test the pressure, to see if your radiator cap can hold pressure, the expansion tank cap. So there's all sorts of adapters. I have got some instructions here on which one's which, but nothing is for the actual Rover. I believe, is this a temperature? I don't know if this is actually a temp. Oh, it is. Oh, it is. It's a temperature tester. How handy is that? And there's a refill hose for your coolant, because you're going to have to stick that in one of them bottles when you pull one of these valves. There is a way of doing it, so I'll show you that in a bit. Anyway, enough waffle. I have just found the correct adapter. There's tons of adapters and tons of caps in there, and I've found the one straight away that will fit, so that's fantastic. First thing to do is we've got to put the drain plug back in at the bottom, clean that up, put the oil filter on at the bottom, and then we can put the top rocker cover back on in sequence. Right, now I've just got my oil filter, and I've put some fresh oil on that, so just pop this back on. I've just cleaned up this area quite nicely, and it spins on. Now the only thing with Rover filters, because they're mounted that way instead of actually downwards, you can't actually pre-fill them with oil properly without an absolute mess. Oh, what a pain. So I just tighten that up 3/4 of the way until I stop. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Good, that's tight now. Just put the drain plug back in. Now this has to be tightened up to 25 Newton meters. I'll do that off camera. And we're done. Look how clean it is under here. This is what I've been doing, guys. I've been doing a bit of cleaning, but look how well all that engine oil and gunk has preserved the aluminium so nicely, and you haven't got all that aluminium corrosion, aluminium oxide I should say. Anyway, that's how easy that is. Done. I'll torque that up now. Great. Right, next thing, take this cardboard off forever. Yeah, and discard it. Right, now we can get the rocker cover gasket back on. So just clean up the faces. It's all good, to be honest with you. Everything's all done, as I say. All the bolts have still got the paint marks on them. I'm really pleased with that. So we can now pop on the rocker cover gasket, which is a very weird design, very strange design. Anyway, it will say top side and exhaust side. So the exhaust side goes here. So there we go. Top exhaust side. It's very self-explanatory. Don't get it wrong. So I'm just going to pop that on. It might be a bit uneven because of obviously the way it's being stored. Yeah, that sits nicely. Right, before we actually put that on, we've got to do an important thing. So I'm just going to literally aim it down into the cams. Which is going to be a bit tricky to start off with. Go, just aim it into the cams nicely, just going across, making sure that they've got oil on them. The trick is not to spill it everywhere, which I have just done. Okay, with the camshaft suitably oiled up, more or less we'll More oil will come to the front because it's canted that way. We literally just pop the gasket back on. That'll be lovely. Remember, get it orientated right, top, exhaust, manifold side. Now, you can just stick the rocker cover and this together, but I can do it this way quite easily. It's just a little bit more of a faff. You guys just make sure that that is nice and lined up. Yeah. It would help if there was actually dowels to do this. The manual says there's dowels, but there isn't. Quite nicely. Go away. Just have a look round to see where the bolts are lined up, and you can just place it down quite nicely. Okay, let's get some bolts in. There are 15 bolts, so let's start off with the middle ones. Hand tighten only, so we're going to go around and hand tighten each one of these. One thing to note is the cam position sensor. It just goes in here. There's two bolts that hold it on. One is a shorter one and one is a longer one that goes around the outside like all the other 15 other 8mm cam bolts. Just give it a quick squirt for preventative maintenance. I love this sensor with the ROVER symbol on it. Love it. Pop this in through the actual, there's actually a groove inside the cover. You'll see it instantly. There's another groove for this wiring, but we'll deal with that in a second. So it should go in quite nicely. I'll just pop the screw in. In fact, I was wrong actually. There's only one screw holding it in, and it isn't the rocker cover bolt. Okay, so it's a shorter one. Looks as if there's two holding it down, but maybe there isn't. Now, all these bolts need to be torqued in sequence to 10 Newton meters, and I'll show you the diagram. So basically, that's the bolt tightening sequence. So we're basically going from the center outwards again, 15. So it's 10 Newton meters to torque them up. If I said 25 Newton meters, I don't know why I said that in the last video. 10 Newton meters in that sequence, and you're done. That's the first one. And these are not quite as hand tight as I wanted, but hey, don't use your torque wrench as a ratchet, but I do. There you go, straight away, torqued. Second one. And it's very refreshing to have an engine with an aluminium engine cover instead of a plastic one, but then that kind of shows you the age of this engine, despite it being an advanced engine once upon a time. That was once upon a time, a long time ago. I can't work out, there's a plug here. I can't work out where it goes. It threads in there 100% because I didn't take it out of that actual holder, but I can't work out where it goes. And no, I didn't video that bit, because if you remember when I did the inlet manifold episode, it was a very short episode and a lot of the footage I had just got wiped out. So literally one moment I was taking all these bolts out, and then the next moment it's sitting on the engine. It was a rubbish video. Unfortunately, these things do happen with technology. I can't really control that. Particularly, I am using the battery out of my Focus, which is an 075 battery, so it's quite big, and it's a little bit on the powerful side for this car, because apparently, according to the handbook, this car only needs 45 amp hours. That is so small. I mean, my Focus needs a 60 amp hour battery. Now I only suspect two things. One, because the Focus has a heated front windscreen, which takes an awful lot of power. This isn't even done up. It takes an awful lot of power. Well, if you take that out of the equation, because not every model got that, it must be the smart charge system on the Focus that actually takes the power, which is quite inefficient actually. Really inefficient. Considering that this car it's got air conditioning, it's got and the ABS, it's got more toys than the Focus, but it needs less power to do so. Very interesting. What I will say is the battery I've ordered is a Yuasa, which is probably the best in my opinion. I've never had a problem with them. 063 battery, and it is probably the most powerful 063 battery in that class. 52 amp hours and 520 cold cranking amps. Now if I compare that to the battery I'm going to use later from the Focus, that is for 60 amp hours for an 075 battery, 550 cranking amps, which isn't a lot at all. It really isn't. I don't know how, well, it is a Halfords battery, but Halfords batteries are pretty good. I believe they're made by Varta, which are also a decent manufacturer of batteries. But 550 is pretty damn average for that size of battery. And the Yuasa one, for a small battery that only fits on this small battery tray, it packs a punch. So you know what? That's all good. So that will be coming very soon. But we will use the Focus battery to hopefully start this up. Okay, and then just stick that hose back on, stick this hose back on. Lovely. Now we can fit the coil packs. Right, so anyone who hasn't done this before, it doesn't look immediately obvious, particularly if you've replaced the leads or messed about with this. So basically, first coil pack goes over here, okay, because the connectors come in. See, I've had to consult the manual myself just to double check, because I did have pictures. So connectors on the left hand side. This wire goes up this second grooving and then down into number 4. The second coil pack sits on number 3, and its HCD goes round here and then down this top groove into number 2. And that's how you do it. So we put the bolts on, and I think it's a torque setting. Let's consult the manual again. Always consult the manual on these things, particularly with smaller items. Yes, in-car procedures, and no idea where they are. Nope. I'll have to have a deeper check. The K series uses, with the MEMS 3, uses a wasted spark system. So essentially, on every couple of rotations, there's always there's a spark when the piston is at the bottom of its travel, not at the top. So it's never going to, it's not going to do anything. It's just a wasted spark. Quite a few cars still use wasted spark technology. Although I've got to say, wasted is the word. It doesn't sound particularly efficient in modern terms, but you know, this is quite an old car. Get out of the way. TVs want to fight me every way. I'm quite conscious that this timing belt cover doesn't fit exactly flush, but I looked at the original photos of when I bought the car, and it's nothing that I've done. I've not put it back wrong. It's just the covers have gone a little bit AWOL, which is not great, because I mean, it's a tiny gap, but all it takes is a tiny pebble to get in there, and then the timing belt, poof, end of the engine. It's as simple as that. I'm just going to tighten that up like that for now, to be honest with you. done. I'm happy with that. Now these, obviously these 3 bolts are for the top cover. Right, now, engine oil. Now, I'm going to quote the book yet again. I mean, we've got plenty of time. 4.5 litres. Nice, fresh fluid that this car has probably not seen in quite a few years. Tricky is to avoid the gurgling. It's nice fresh engine oil. I've never used semi-synthetic oil. I've only ever used fully synthetic, and obviously with the P6 fully mineral, green, thick engine oil from Halfords, the classic stuff like the Duckham's back in the day. And no, that's not enough. Okay, right, what we're going to do is I'm going to stop just over there. Right, I'm quite conscious of putting too much oil in an engine. I have done that before. Now I'm looking at the markings. We've put 4 litres in, so I'm just going to leave it to settle, and we'll see what the dipstick says in a few minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to just check around and just make sure that we have everything we need. I think this might answer my question. So these 3 bolts are the plastic cover bolts. These 2 bolts, forgot about these 2. Well, that's thankful. Now I need to find out what's going on here. Right, I think I might have made a bit of a boo-boo with this. I've put it in here. I've clipped this wire into this piece. It doesn't go there because it goes in here. That's the stepper motor. That's quite important, that is. The air control valve. Yeah, so that's what that's doing there. Right, now I've got that faff sorted. I've just had to sort out some of this wiring here where it goes over to make sure nothing's kinked or in a really weird position, but it's all seated nicely now. I don't know how I got that wrong. That would have been a bit of a failure. That would have definitely led to a non-start. But anyway, we're going to just put the dipstick in. I've just give it a bit of a clean. And as you're going to witness, it won't focus in, but that oil is basically at the top. It's on the max. Now, that is possibly because of the amount of oil in the sump. But when the car fills that filter, that level will drop. So what I'm going to do is put a tiny bit more in, and we're going to leave it there, probably about 4.1, 4.2 litres, and then we'll check again. But as I say, once the engine's running, and then we can let the engine run for a bit, hopefully, and then after that we turn it off, and then we check the levels at a later time. So that's the best way to do it. So I'm literally just going to put just a little bit more in, and we will be done. Just put a bit more into the bowl itself. Yep, that'll be enough for now. Okay, put that there and just tip that to go in. Now that's done. ATF fluid. Now this one, I have asked on the forums, it can be 4.5 litres, but I'm just going to put a conservative 4 litres in, and we'll go from there. It has been thoroughly drained, so it will probably be 4.5 litres, and we can't really check the level properly until the transmission is running. But what I need is 4 litres in that gearbox to hopefully get it to work, get it to go in drive and reverse, and then we'll go from there. I can't really fully check the level because, like many automatics, it's you get the transmission hot, you take it through every single gear quadrant to fill the valve body, then you put it in park and check the level. You check it from hot, you don't check it from cold. This is a big mistake that people make on torque converter automatics or CVTs or any other automatic. The only ones where this procedure does not count are Automated manuals, I don't like them. They're very rare. They are on certain cars over the last like 15-20 years, but they're not very common. You have to basically pause in neutral before going to the next gear to let the automatic clutch, because it is literally a clutch like in a manual, but it's got an automatic solenoid on it which controls the actual gear changing for you. And on dual clutch systems, dual clutch gearboxes, they are manual gearboxes with 2 lay shafts, so 1, 3 and 5 and 2, 4 and 6, let's say for the Ford power shift, the infamous Ford power shift. I would own a Mark III power shift if they weren't so bad, but they are really poor. But basically you've got 2 lay shafts, 2 clutches controlling each set of gears. That is a manual gearbox that has its own specific fluid and its own way of checking the level. In fact, it's more like a manual gearbox in the way it's checked. It's not an automatic. Anyway, let's get on with filling the gearbox. Right, unless you have a flexible funnel, which I somewhat don't have, you're going to have to move the charcoal canister out the way. We're going to have to do it at a slight angle. We're going to take our time with this, because in my experience when filling up automatic transmissions, they tend to, well, the dipstick tubes are very small, and a lot of transmissions are really just not designed to be filled up. However, this transmission, it is a service item to change the oil and the filter every 37,500 miles or 30,000, something like that. So yeah, this has not been changed in 50, and I think the fluid didn't look great when I looked at the dipstick, but when I actually saw the fluid in the bowl, it was much better, and coming out the gearbox, it gave me a little bit of an indication that I don't think anything's burnt. I think the magnets show me that there was normal wear from the clutch material, as you would expect. A lot of people drive these gearboxes and they don't actually realise one thing. Do not keep it in a driven gear, i.e. drive or reverse, basically drive mostly, when you're in stationary traffic. Because when you're in drive, the clutches, the reverse, the drive clutches are under a huge amount of pressure. And they get hot really quickly. So what Rover recommend, and it says this in the handbook, is to put it in neutral. Put it in neutral while idling in stationary traffic for more, if you're idling for more than a minute. Okay, because then that way you're not putting pressure on the clutches, you're letting it cool down, the clutch is not getting hot, the fluid's not getting hot. It's good for the gearbox, but a lot of people don't drive them this way, and I think because people don't drive them in such a way, that's what led to the failure of a lot of these gearboxes. I just hope I've got to mine in time, because it's going to be a faff getting another one. Very, very careful. Be very careful. Oh, I think I might have aged about 30 years trying to get that in. There has been some spillage, but only minor spillage. It's good to have a rag just here, because yeah, there has been some spillage. I'm going to clean that up with some brake cleaner, but yeah, I've managed to get about 4 litres, I'd say 4 litres, given that some of it was spilt. I've had to use more than 4 litres out the bottle, but that should be good enough to be going on with. So just stick that back like that. Pity about the handle breaking, but you know, the little piece of orange handles decided to break off, but hey, you take this out now, and I'll just give it a bit of a clean up with some brake cleaner, and we can say that that gearbox is now ready to start and drive as it is. Fortunately, as usual, we have hit a bit of a problem with the bleed kit. I was going to go for this, but unfortunately the actual connector just doesn't hold the air. I can hear the air hissing from around the seal. I can't find another one that will fit. To be honest with you, I'm just going to chuck the coolant straight in, and we're going to do it the old-fashioned way, and the way that most of you will do it anyway. Right, this first thing you need to note, I have cleaned that by the way. When you're filling this system, fill it very slowly. The second thing is, there's a bleed screw. Take it out, and when coolant starts to run from there clean, tighten it. Okay, we want the air to get out first, and then when the coolant comes out, it's all done as far as that's concerned. We may need to take that off again at some point. Just pour it very gently. Naturally there is going to be air. You just pour it really nice and slowly. Try and get it as smooth as possible. Okay. That's above the max. Done. Now we are ready to crank this car. I've undone the injectors, and you have to take the fuel pump fuse out. If you don't know what that is, in the fuse box it's the only 20 amp one in that fuse box. Well, I'm afraid my heart sank just now. Bottle, engine. Can you guess what's wrong? Give you another guess. No, it's not the head, thank God. I was seeing fluid coming from just down there. See there on the deck? That deck where that orange blob is of coolant? There you go. I thought the head were gone. No. That frigging bolt. It's leaking like a sieve. I've got to tighten that up. Might have to make this a part 1 and part 2. Anyway, the head's back on and I've got the bolts out, and it's a bit messy under there, but I've caught most of the coolant. But this needs to come off, and I need to put some silicone on this because, yeah, the gasket isn't the best, and it does need something to help it seal. So I'm going to get some gasket maker on there and then bolt it back in as tight as I can. Right, I think we'll try this again. Hopefully nothing's going to come back out. I shouldn't hear anything, and that level's stayed there. God. Tense this is, I haven't even started it up yet. Well, you may ask, after another attempt, that wouldn't have made any difference because I failed to spot something that might be an issue. I'm just going to bring you down here. Can you see this open way? Can you see what's wrong in that picture? This exhaust gasket is huge. That's really poor. I didn't even spot it. This is the correct one and I've put it on the correct way, but look, I'm going to have to cut very carefully across here with a multi-tool. I am not taking this exhaust, I'm not taking all this off again just to cut that. That's not happening. So what we're going to do is get the multi-tool out. But today, as far as I'm concerned, that's that. I'm going to leave it here. There is a bit of a mess underneath, but we've caught most of the fluid. Leave you there, guys. The next part of this will be me getting that multi-tool out and cutting that piece of exhaust manifold just away from the flange. No wonder it wasn't sealing. Silicone wasn't going to do any good. So that's the reason why we were getting no pressure with that exhaust pipe. I thought that adapter was not sealing. Turns out nothing to do with the head or the fact that that isn't sealing. It's not sealing properly. Right, take care guys, I will see you very soon.